Welcome to Mediumship Moments with psychic medium Kim Dorham. Join her as she shares her personal journey with mediumship, connects with your loved ones, and discusses topics dealing with spirituality.
Welcome to Mediumship Moments. I'm your host, Kim Dorham, psychic medium, second-gen psychic medium, and I'm really excited about today's topic. Today's topic is psychic kids. And so we're going to explore what that entails, some strategies to help your kids if you feel that they're blessed with this ability. So let's dive into it. Now, it's called The Gift, by the way, the stories of psychic kids. So imagine being 8 years of age and knowing something bad's about to happen, right? Did any of you ever experience that? You just had this feeling of dread. And I know a lot of kids nowadays have anxiety, but it's just this knowingness that something is going to happen, something bad, whether that's, we're going to get a flat tire or the family, we're going to miss the flight. There's just this, you're 8 years of age and you just have this feeling that something bad's going to happen. Or let's say, you're talking to someone that no one else can see. For me and my household, that happened a lot. But, did you ever have those kids that you walk into and they're having a full-blown conversation and there's, maybe with a family member who's been gone for years. And, this isn't fiction. This is their reality. So across the world, thousands of parents say that their children show what are psychic abilities. And you're like, well, what is, whether they sense energies, can predict events, know something bad is going to happen, claim to see spirits. But, really what is happening with these kids? And again, it's throughout all cultures. This isn't just something that we see in the United States, but throughout England, especially places that have had many. We're newbies with 250 years of democracy. In England, there's thousands of years of inhabitants there. So, the way that I say it, are these children blessed with an unseen gift or an ability, or are their minds expressing something deeper, more human and more psychological? And that's, we'll dive into the history over that, whether it's their personal stories behind some of this phenomenon. So when people say they have a psychic child, let's picture the movie Sixth Sense or Stranger Things or ghost whispering child from a horror story. Yeah, I don't particularly watch horror stories. I'm not afraid of the dead. It's the living that scare the bejeebus out of me. But, that's, we're trying to paint a picture of what a psychic child could be. And in my experience, it runs the gamut, whether it's male or female. Now, females tend to be more in tune with their gut instincts, but I've come across young boys that have had this ability as well. But the real phenomenon is more complex here. Psychic kids are said to have one or multiple following abilities. And I'll get into those abilities in a second. So what is a person who's psychic, right? They have the ability beyond our normal senses, beyond hearing, seeing, feeling, tasting, okay? Our five senses. They know information that can't be explained by science. Okay. They have this knowingness that can't be explained. So here are some of those abilities, right, that children can express or have that are psychic, these psychic children. So they have what the ability is called clairvoyance. Now, that would be seeing an image that other people can't see. So what would that be like? They may see, Mom, there's this man in my room and he's got a hat on and he's got suspenders and he's got a pitchfork. And you're like, there's a man in your room with a pitchfork? Well, that child could be seeing a previous inhabitant of the land. Let's say it's the farmer. Let's say that land goes back 150 years that it had been farmed before developments were put on that house, on that tract of land. And that child is seeing the farmer who farmed that land. Clairaudience. So clairvoyance is that TV camera with either inside your head that they can see a flash of an image, or they see it actually standing in their room. But that psychic ability is called clairvoyance. So moving on to clairaudience. Now, what I want you to think of, this is how I explain clairaudience, pardon me, is that think of your favorite song. Think that you're hearing your favorite song now, a couple verses, right? I'm learning to play Natalie Merchant's Wonder. Right away, I can hear that song. That's what it's like to be clairaudient, that you can hear that music play or someone speaking to you, that voice. So that's hearing voices or sounds, whether that's someone speaking to you or sometimes kids will hear, let's say I'll use the example that that child was seeing a farmer. They may then hear the tractor machinery being revved up and ready to go. So that's an experience or an ability of clairaudience. Clairsentience, which is feeling others' emotions or energies. Children that are very empathic, which is just feeling the world's energy, walking into a room and knowing somebody's upset. Just walking into that room and knowing that somebody's been crying. They walk into a room and they feel that energy of the room, the sadness in the room, the upsetment in a room. That's just empathic. They can pick up the energy of places or people. For me, when I go to an airport, I've got to have the AirPods in. I've got to protect myself. I got to listen to music and just kind of zone out of everybody's frenetic energy that everybody has at an airport. It's hard enough traveling, let alone during a shutdown or over the holidays. But that clairsentience is the feeling of emotions or energies with others or within an environment. So they may walk into a room and feel sadness. A lot of older houses in the 1800s, if they had children that had some learning disabilities or some challenges physically, they would actually have that room in the attic where they would lock them in, as cruel as that sounds. And when you buy over a house and let's say you're redoing it, that portion of that house, those rooms up in the attic, um, could have a profound sadness when you walk in. So let's talk about precognition, another psychic ability that these children will exhibit, these psychic children. That's precognition, is knowing events before they happen. And that is just whether they visualize it, whether they feel it, but it's a knowingness about an event before it transpires. And, they may blurt out, like for me, I forewarned my father a half an hour before the dog ran out in front of the car. What I was seeing was clairvoyance. I was seeing the dog, kind of like a movie, run out in front of me. But these kids will have this ability of knowing, something happens before it happens, right? Let's talk about mediumship, because the three clairs that I just talked about, voyance, audience, and clairsentience, a lot of that is a bridge to mediumship, right? So mediumship is actually communicating. It's talking to that energy that's in a different dimension. And, they could be talking, they could also talk to somebody who's been gone for years. I have more situations where people's little muffin heads, they're like 3 years of age, start talking to their pop. And Henry's here. And Henry crossed before they were born. How would they know it's Henry instead of Pop? Henry's here. So they'll talk, they know their name. They'll laugh and kid with them. They'll pour them tea. And a lot of you think it's imagination, and imagination is terribly important for children. It really is. But in this case, they know a lot of information about that entity they're talking to because they're having a full-blown conversation. So the idea of a gifted or chosen children appears across all time and culture, where they've talked about psychic children within their culture. For instance, let's talk about ancient Greece. Oracles were these psychic people were often young. They believed themselves to be pure energy to channel the divine. So an oracle could be 12, 13, 14 years of age or younger. Now, in many indigenous cultures, children who dreamed of ancestors or nature spirits, as they called them, out in the environment, were trained as healers and seers. So people like me, if I was in an indigenous culture, I would end up being trained as a shaman, or because you have this already innate ability. And again, these children who showed this ability were not shunned. In many cultures, they were held in very high esteem. They would be put up in higher cultural station, if you will. So now they have many names for them, but in the 70s and 80s, 1970s and 1980s, the concept of indigo children, there was a whole spiritual renaissance at that time. And the term indigo children emerged. These children had strong intuition and psychic insight. They were able to sense dishonesty, hidden motives, and they may have seen energetic imbalances. So somebody who was ill before they were actually ill. They were seen as, I hate to say, like people who color outside the circle, right? They were system breakers who resisted control, and they challenged outdated structures. These people who were indigo children that had this ability. Their psychic traits symbolize a mission to raise collective consciousness and to bring about change. So it was really interesting to read that, to see that during that time, because we had the flower power, and it was right along that belief of a higher consciousness, whether that was through your own physical or through taking of certain herbs to reach that higher collective sense. Then in the 1990s and 2000s, the term crystal children came out. And these children were again thought to carry healing, medicinal abilities, and empathic energy, right? Their psychic sensitivity was often described telepathically. And now, what is that? That means they communicate without speaking orally. They speak with an inside voice. And so it's a way of connecting with a deep emotional resonance to others. When I communicate with your angels in the outfield, so to speak, I do it telepathically. When I quiet down, I'm asking them who they are, show me the connection, tell me something funny, or tell me something I wouldn't know. I lovingly say this that I can't Google. But telepathic communication is speaking with an inside voice, is the best way I can describe this. Crystal children are also believed to operate from the heart chakra. For all you people, right? The heart chakra is the green, which is promoting peace, compassion, and energy healing again. So these children are looked at as having these heightened senses and awareness. Now, what I often see with children who are psychic children is that they're old souls. And I may have spoken about that in an earlier podcast about reincarnation. I just want to throw that in there. So from 2000s to present time, we now, again, have the terms. Now they've moved into more psychic children. And so it's interesting how they break these down. Children who have direct energetic awareness are considered new souls. Old souls to me are children that tend to have a deeper, higher level of mediumship ability. So they're psychic children, and they may be strong in all three of those clairs: clairaudience, clairvoyance, sentience, the feeling, the knowing. But it's interesting how they're termed. Their psychic traits include, like I said, empathy, aura perception. And you're like, what is an aura? Well, everybody's got a battery pack, is what I call it. And you have a battery pack. So when you sit in front of me, I can see this energy emanating. Curlin Photography talks about this. Again, I came from a photographic background, and they take a picture of the oak leaf and then take a picture of the same oak leaf, but cut. And what you would see, they called it the ghost image of the outline of the whole leaf, even though it was cut in half. And that is kind of like an aura, that energy around that continues. Everybody's got this aura, right? And you have different colors, different, how do I explain it? Different colors, different symbols in it, and it ebbs and flows. So the color based upon both your health, your well-being, how many cylinders you're running on is what I say, right? Like for instance, anybody for me who sits in front of me who has a green aura, I know they work in healthcare without a doubt. And then I'll see a mediscus with an MD, an RN, for specifics. And so these psychic traits that the kids they can see manifest the aura perception and their ability to manifest intentions quickly. So, it's it's a challenge to have these children. Many of my clients have come to me to talk about their kids seeing or knowing. The psychologists are aware of these terms and believe some experience children have can play a role in psychic phenomenon. Okay? It's interesting how the therapists are seeing this unfold, whether they see it as a psychic phenomenon or manifesting a psychological trait. They believe that children who are highly sensitive and imaginable uh, can even have sleep-related hallucinations. So this is where the fine line is my child having some type of psychological phenomenon that is starting to manifest, or are they psychic? And it's working with a therapist or talking with a psychic medium, and the questions that I ask over what the child is perceiving. Now, a well-respected colleague of mine who I love to pieces, an incredible psychic medium in his own right, Chip Coffey, has talked extensively about the topic of psychic children. In his TV show, Psychic Kids, Chip was a mentor to these children. Again, he would go to their homes and walk through with the children about what they were seeing and sensing and feeling. And then, he would talk with the parents to see what the parent side of what they were seeing their child experience. And over time, if it's grown more intense, is it more in one section of the house? And, he really helped these children to better understand their abilities, okay, and their parents on how to navigate having a psychic kid, navigate their world with a psychic kid. When I have clients reach out to me or people are like, my daughter is seeing these people sit on her bed and things like that, the first thing I say is I get them to get the book Chip Coffey wrote. It's called Psychic Kids. And he touches upon highlighted stories from the show and people he's worked with. And he gives additional resources to those parents to help them with these highly empathic children. I often say, energy, they're showing up in energy. These souls we're all a form of energy. And when this physical body no longer is necessary, the soul moves back into the spiritual realm. So why are they inhabiting this space? They enjoy it. If it was a place that brought them joy and safety, sometimes those souls need to be shown to the white light. Not always, but sometimes. Energy is energy, right? We come from energy and we continue to be energy. As I often quote Albert Einstein, energy can't be destroyed, it's only changed in its form. And so if you have a child that is seeing, let's say they're trying to sleep and they're waking this child up. My daughter had an experience at a very young age when she was at a very old home. Her little friend Bubbles, I'm thinking, my daughter's an only child, she's making up a playmate. Well, Aubrey would come home exhausted and she'd have her hair and she just looked like she didn't sleep. Aubrey would tell me stories about Bubbles. And I was like, okay, and she's a little girl and she had this dress and she looked like this. Okay. And then it was a statement that my daughter made that really floored me. And she said, well, I took the batteries out of the toy and Bubbles made it light up. So the toys were still lighting up without the batteries. Yeah. So, I realized then that my daughter was a psychic kid who was seeing a child from what I can gather, the 1860s, 1870s, based upon how she appeared. And, I told my daughter to claim her space. Now, what does that mean? Tell Bubbles that she cannot wake you up when you're sleeping and that she cannot light up the toys anymore. That when I go to bed, I sleep. If you want to play before, we play then, but not while I'm sleeping. And that's the part of the children having their own power over these entities. Okay. And again, it's not anything negative. It's just they see them. And I didn't want her to be fearful because, again, fear is an energy that other energies can gravitate towards. So I recommend that if a child is being woken up, that they say out loud that I don't want you to frighten me. You're welcome here, but don't frighten me. Don't wake me up. Don't touch me. Sometimes they like to, touch them. And give your child a sense of claiming their own space. But I often, when parents reach out to me, there's a list of questions I go through over what they're experiencing. And then I highly recommend the book because he really does a great job with breaking down stories, but also each story has advice about how to deal with a child in that circumstance. And again, Chip Coffey is an amazing psychic medium. I was lucky enough to meet him probably over a decade ago in Philadelphia. He does paranormal investigations as well. And we were over in Old City. And it was really cool because he set up 3 flashlights, which he used as devices to communicate. Might have been 12 years ago. And what do I mean? A red flashlight, it was like a Magna flashlight, small, and you'd unscrew the back of it just enough where it turned off. It was on, and then you turn it off. You put that down. He had a silver one, and he had a blue one. So the blue was yes, the red was no, and in the middle was the silver flashlight, which was the control. And he sensed a presence there and started to ask questions. And sure enough, we had a conversation back and forth, a yes and no. And it was quite lengthy. It was really cool. It was really cool. So that was before we have all the Flux and Oculus and all these other devices that we now use to communicate with them on the other side. But again, Chip Coffey, an amazing psychic medium who really talks about what it's like to have a psychic child and how to best help them. So, as I often love to talk about here is my mediumship moment, right? So, I'm going to talk about a mediumship moment, my psychic kid moment, one of many I can remember in my house. So, I can remember my 2 younger brothers and I being downstairs in what's called the rec room. Anybody else have those? You had the dining room with the sitting room, and downstairs was like the rec room. And all of a sudden, my one brother started to smell, we could smell flowers. And I'm like, do you smell flowers? We smell flowers. And it was like the best way I could tell you, the smell of like gardenias or like a funeral home? That kind of smell, where there's flowers, flowers, flowers. So we're all looking at each other and we can start to smell the flowers. And then we saw energies in the house. Now, what did we see? We saw people mulling about, and it was just brief. It was the room downstairs in the rec room. After we smelled the flowers, it felt full. It got like crowded. It's the best way to describe. And we knew they were spirits, but we couldn't see exactly who they were. And so my brothers and I became very accustomed that whenever we smelled the gardenia smell and the house started to feel full, that we knew within a few weeks of feeling this and seeing this, that we would be attending a funeral, that we would hear of a pass, and that we would be attending a funeral. I now realize that what we were sensing is what I refer to as the transition team, that those loved ones, family and friends who come to help us cross, and us off to Angel Boot Camp so we learn how to use those new wings, and they'll throw a heck of a party for us afterwards. So we were, in fact, sensing the transition team. So that's a glimpse into what it was like to be a psychic kid with other psychic kids. Again, if you have this type of child, reach out to me, or better yet, get the book, because the book Psychic Kids by Chip Coffey really does a wonderful job. I thank you again for listening to Mediumship Moments. And as always, I encourage you to keep chatting with your angels because they can hear you. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time for another episode of Mediumship Moments. If you enjoyed this episode of Kim's podcast, check her out on Instagram and TikTok at Kim Durham Medium.